The insult didn't come from strength. It came from assumption. A man looked at Stephen and decided, in 1 second, that respect wasn't required. Not because Stephen said anything, not because he did anything wrong, but because he didn't look dangerous. That's how most conflicts begin. Not with anger, with miscalculation. Stephen stood there. Average height, lean build, quiet demeanor. The bodybuilder saw an easy target. He made a comment, loud enough for others to hear, designed to belittle. The room noticed. Some looked away. Some waited to see what would happen. Because in that moment, a choice was being made. Not by the bodybuilder, by Stephen. He could defend himself, argue back, prove something, or he could do nothing. Most people think doing nothing is weakness. But what happened next proved otherwise. Stephen didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't look away. He just paused. And in that pause, something shifted. The bodybuilder expected a reaction. He got silence instead. Silence that felt heavier than words. This is where the Real story begins. Not with who was stronger, but with who understood power better. Because the insult that was meant to diminish Stephen, it was about to backfire completely. Stephen didn't react, and that silence became a test. The bodybuilder took it as weakness. Most people do, because when someone doesn't respond immediately, the world assumes they can't. And that assumption invites pressure, not peace. The bodybuilder leaned in closer. What? Nothing to say. Still, Stephen didn't move. His face showed no anger, no fear, no embarrassment, just calm. The kind of calm that makes people uncomfortable. Because silence isn't neutral. It's a mirror. It reflects back whatever energy someone brings to it. The bodybuilder brought mockery. The silence reflected it back as desperation. He brought aggression. The silence reflected it back as insecurity. Everyone watching could feel it. This wasn't submission. This was something else. The bodybuilder tried again. Another comment. Sharper this time. The room got quieter. People weren't laughing with him anymore. They were watching him. And that's when the dynamic shifted. Because Stephen's silence wasn't passive. It was active. Every second he didn't react, the bodybuilder lost a little more ground. His voice got louder. His gestures bigger. He was trying to force a response. Any response. But Stephen gave him nothing. No validation. No resistance. No fuel. Just presence. How many times have you been judged before you even spoke? Think about it. Someone decides who you are in seconds. Based on appearance. Based on assumptions. And suddenly you're expected to prove yourself. Stephen refused that game entirely. He didn't defend. He didn't explain. He didn't perform. He just existed. Fully. Calmly. And in doing so, he made the bodybuilder's insult collapse under its own weight. Because insults need a reaction to survive. Without one, they just hang in the air. Exposed. Weak. The test wasn't whether Stephen could respond. The test was whether he needed to. And his silence answered that clearly. He didn't. Here's where the shift happened. Stephen didn't raise his voice. Didn't posture. Didn't explain himself. He changed his posture. His eyes. His stillness. 5 seconds was all it took. Not to dominate, but to reset the dynamic. And suddenly, the room felt different. Because real strength doesn't rush. It settles. First second, Stephen straightened his spine. Not dramatically. Just enough. His shoulders rolled back slightly. His stance widened an inch. Second, his breathing slowed. Deliberate. Controlled. The kind of breathing that comes before action, not panic. Third second, his eyes locked onto the bodybuilder. Not a glare. Not anger. Just direct, unblinking focus. The kind that says, I see exactly who you are. Fourth second, his jaw relaxed. No tension, no strain. Complete calm in his face while his body radiated readiness. Fifth second, nothing. He held it all, perfectly still. And that stillness said everything. The bodybuilder felt it immediately. His smirk faltered. His posture shifted backward just slightly. Because something had changed in the air between them. Stephen hadn't threatened him, hadn't moved toward him, but the energy was completely different now. Before, Stephen seemed dismissible. Now, he seemed deliberate, and deliberate is dangerous. The bodybuilder's brain started recalculating. Wait, who is this person actually? Why isn't he reacting the way he should? What does he know that I don't? Those 5 seconds created doubt, and doubt kills dominance. The people watching felt it too. Conversation stopped, eyes fixed on the two men, because everyone recognized the shift, even if they couldn't name it. This wasn't about who was bigger anymore. It was about who was certain. And Steven's certainty was absolute. He didn't need to prove anything. He didn't need to win anything. He just needed to be unmoved. The bodybuilder took a small step back, not a retreat, just space. His body making a decision his ego wouldn't admit. Steven didn't follow, didn't press the advantage. He simply returned to what he was doing before, as if nothing had happened. And that might have been the most powerful move of all, because it showed the entire interaction meant nothing to him. The insult, the posturing, the test, none of it mattered. 5 seconds. That's all it took to flip the entire script. Not with force, with presence. The bodybuilder felt it before he understood it. That moment when someone realizes, this person is not what I thought. Not fear, awareness. This is the part no one talks about. Power isn't proven by action. It's recognized by presence. The bodybuilder's eyes changed first. The smugness faded, replaced by something else. Caution. He wasn't sure what he was looking at anymore. Steven hadn't done anything aggressive, hadn't made threats. But the way he stood there, the way he breathed, it triggered something primal, an instinct that bypasses logic. This person is capable. Not capable of what, exactly. Just capable. And that uncertainty is what creates respect. The crowd sensed it too. People stopped pretending not to watch. They were fully tuned in now. Because humans are wired to detect power shifts. We feel them in our bodies before our minds catch up. The air pressure changes. The tension redistributes. And everyone adjusts accordingly. One guy who was smiling earlier, his face went neutral. A woman near the back stepped slightly closer. The bodybuilder's friend, who'd been encouraging him, went quiet. All of this happened in seconds. No words, no announcements, just recognition. Steven had become someone who mattered in that space. Not because he demanded it, because he embodied it. There's a difference most people miss. Demanding respect is loud. It requires constant maintenance. You have to keep proving it, keep defending it. Embodying respect is silent. It's self-sustaining. You don't prove it because it simply is. The bodybuilder started recalculating his entire approach. His body language softened. His voice dropped slightly. He wasn't apologizing. Not yet. But he was adjusting. Because his nervous system told him to. Steven never broke eye contact. Not in a challenging way. In an acknowledging way. I see you seeing me. That was the unspoken message. And it landed. The bodybuilder nodded. Just barely. A micro gesture that most people wouldn't even notice. But Steven noticed. And that nod was everything. It was submission disguised as casualness. It was, okay, I understand now. It was the bodybuilder's brain telling his ego to stand down. Have you ever felt a room shift when someone stopped explaining themselves? It's one of the most powerful things you can witness. Because most people over-explain, over-justify, over-prove. They think words create authority. But words often dilute it. When someone stops explaining and just stand in their truth, the room has no choice but to adjust to them. Steven didn't say, I'm not someone to mess with. He didn't say, you misread me. He didn't say anything. And that silence carried more weight than any speech could. Because explanation implies doubt. Silence implies certainty. And certainty always wins. The bodybuilder knew this now. Not intellectually. Viscerally. His body told him, this was a mistake. And once your body tells you that, your ego has to follow. He turned slightly, preparing to exit the interaction. Not running, just disengaging, looking for a way to save face while backing down. And Steven? Steven let him, because power doesn't need the last word. It just needs to be recognized. And it was. The insult didn't backfire because of force. It backfired because of exposure. When Steven stayed calm, the insulter became the one who looked small. Not physically, socially. People didn't side with Steven because he was strong. They sided with him because he was controlled. And control is rare. The bodybuilder stood there, trapped in his own momentum. He'd started something he couldn't finish. And everyone knew it. That's the real embarrassment. Not losing a fight, losing credibility. His insult was meant to elevate him, to get laughs, to establish dominance. Instead, it revealed him, revealed his need for validation, revealed his insecurity, revealed that he picks targets he thinks can't fight back. And once that's revealed, you can't take it back. The room read him completely now. Every person watching made their assessment. He went after someone quiet because he thought it was safe. He tried to win respect by taking it from someone else. He needed an audience to feel powerful. None of this was said out loud, but didn't need to be. Social judgment is silent and swift. A woman who'd been standing near the bodybuilder took a step away. Subtle, but intentional. His friend looked down at his phone. Sudden disinterest. Another guy shook his head slightly. Secondhand embarrassment. These tiny reactions compound. They create a social reality that's impossible to ignore. The bodybuilder felt it. You can always feel when a room turns on you. It's in the air, the way people position their bodies, the quality of the silence. He tried to recover. I was just joking, man. Relax. The classic retreat. Reframe aggression as humor when it doesn't land. But it was too late, because everyone saw what happened. They saw him push. They saw Steven hold. They saw him break first. And now this just joking line confirmed what they already knew. He was backpedaling. Steven still said nothing. He didn't accept the excuse, didn't acknowledge it, just continued existing in his space, unbothered. And that made it worse for the bodybuilder. Because when someone won't even grant you the mercy of a response, you're truly dismissed. You're not a threat, not a concern, not even worth addressing. You're irrelevant. That's a deeper cut than any insult. The bodybuilder's face reddened, not from anger now, from shame. He'd been on display, performing dominance, and the performance had failed publicly. There's no recovering from that in a moment. He looked around for support, for someone to laugh with him, reset the energy. Nobody gave it to him. They weren't hostile, just neutral. And neutrality, in that context, was condemnation. One of his gym buddies finally spoke up. Come on, let's go. A lifeline. An exit. The bodybuilder took it immediately. Yeah, whatever. This is boring anyway. The final cope. Pretend you're leaving because you're uninterested, not because you lost. But his body language betrayed him. Shoulders slightly hunched. Pace a bit too quick. Eyes not meeting anyone's. The walk of someone who knows they messed up. Steven watched him leave. Still calm. Still centered. He didn't gloat. Didn't smile. Didn't say anything to the people around him. He just returned to his business. As if the last 10 minutes hadn't happened. But they had happened. And everyone there would remember. Not as the time Steven fought a bodybuilder. As the time a bodybuilder embarrassed himself trying to bully someone. That's the story that would get retold. Because the narrative always belongs to the person who kept their composure. The bodybuilder became a cautionary tale in real time. A reminder of what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. When you assume you know someone's capacity based on appearance. When you perform for an audience that ends up judging you instead. And here's what most people miss. Steven didn't humiliate him. The bodybuilder humiliated himself. Steven just refused to save him from it. Refused to react in a way that would let him save face. Refused to engage in a dynamic that would validate the insult. And that refusal was the most powerful move possible. Because it forced the bodybuilder to stand alone in his own mistake. Fully exposed. Fully accountable. Fully embarrassed. Not by someone else's action. By his own. This wasn't about muscles. It was about hierarchy. When someone tries to assert dominance and fails, the system corrects itself. Silently. Immediately. The bodybuilder didn't lose a fight. He lost status. And status is everything. Most people think power struggles are about physical capability. Who's stronger? Who's faster? Who could do more damage? But that's surface level. The real battle is always hierarchical. It's about who commands respect in a space, who influences the room's energy, who others defer to, consciously or not. The bodybuilder tried to climb the hierarchy by pushing Steven down. Standard dominance play. Make someone else look weak, you look strong by comparison. Except it only works if the target accepts their assigned position. Steven didn't. He didn't fight the assignment. He simply ignored it. And ignoring a hierarchy challenge is the ultimate rejection of it. Because hierarchy requires participation. If someone tries to dominate you and you don't acknowledge the attempt, their power move dissolves. It becomes theater without an audience. The bodybuilder performed dominance. Stephen refused to be the audience. And without an audience, the performance has no meaning. Here's the pattern most people miss. Dominance is loud because it's uncertain. Control is quiet because it's certain. The bodybuilder needed everyone to see him winning. That need itself is a weakness. It says, I require external validation to feel powerful. Stephen needed nothing from anyone. That independence is strength. It says, my value doesn't depend on your perception. And independence always beats dependence in a hierarchy game. Always. The room registered this immediately. Not consciously, instinctively. Humans are pack animals. We're wired to detect social ranking. And we're wired to adjust our behavior based on who ranks where. Before the interaction, the bodybuilder had social capital. Size, presence, confidence. Stephen was neutral, unremarkable, easy to overlook. After the interaction, complete reversal. Stephen became the frame everyone else oriented around. The bodybuilder became background noise. This flip happened without a single punch thrown, without raised voices, without any overt display of power. Just through the mechanics of control versus reaction. Stephen controlled himself completely. The bodybuilder couldn't control himself, or the situation, or the outcome, and everyone saw it. That visibility is what changed the hierarchy. Because hierarchies aren't about who should have power. They're about who demonstrates power. And demonstration happens through behavior under pressure. The bodybuilder crumbled under pressure he created himself. Stephen solidified under pressure someone else created for him. One went down, one went up. The system corrected. Now watch what happens next. Because this is where it gets interesting. The people in that space will treat both men differently going forward. Not because of a decision they make. Because of an instinct they follow. They'll give Stephen more space, more attention, more respect. Not dramatic amounts. Just more. Eye contact will last slightly longer. Conversations will include him more naturally. His opinions will carry more weight. All subconscious adjustments. The bodybuilder will experience the opposite. People will be friendly, but guarded. They'll laugh at his jokes, but not as hard. They'll include him, but not defer to him. He'll feel the shift without being able to name it. And he'll probably overcompensate. Get louder, more aggressive, more insistent on being seen, which will only make it worse. Because compensation is visible. And visible compensation confirms the loss of status. It's a loop most people can't escape once they're in it. Why do you think control feels more intimidating than aggression? Because aggression is predictable. You know what's coming. You can prepare for it, respond to it. It's loud. It's visible. It shows you exactly what someone's willing to do. Control is unpredictable. You don't know what's underneath it. You don't know the limits, the capabilities, the boundaries. It's quiet. It's contained. It hides everything until it doesn't. And humans fear the unknown more than the known. We fear what we can't measure. Aggression can be measured. You see it all. Control can't. You only see the surface. And what's beneath that surface? You have no idea. That uncertainty creates respect. Not the respect you demand. The respect you command. Without asking. Without performing. Without needing it. The bodybuilder learned this the hard way. He brought aggression. Visible. Measurable. Predictable. Stephen brought control. Invisible. Unmeasurable. Unpredictable. And in that matchup, control wins every time. Not because it's stronger. Because it's smarter. It operates on a level aggression can't touch. The hierarchy shifted. Not through force. Through recognition. Everyone recognized who actually had power in that moment. And once recognition happens, the pattern completes itself. Status redistributes. Balance restores. And the person who tried to game the system gets corrected by it. Silently. Immediately. Permanently. Nothing dramatic happened next. And that's the point. No shouting. No crowd. No hero moment. Just a quiet shift in behavior. From everyone. Because once a dynamic breaks, it never fully returns. Respect doesn't need noise. It needs certainty. The bodybuilder left. The crowd dispersed. Within minutes, the space looked exactly as it had before. People returned to their conversations, their routines, their lives. But something had fundamentally changed, and nobody talked about it. That's the aftermath nobody sees. The invisible recalibration that happens after a power shift. Stephen continued his day normally. Same actions, same demeanor, same energy. But people responded to him differently now. A guy who never made eye contact before nodded at him. Someone who would have walked past him stepped aside slightly. A woman who didn't know him smiled briefly. Tiny gestures, barely noticeable, but they add up. They create a new social reality. Stephen didn't seek these changes. He probably didn't even notice most of them, but they were there because the room had decided something about him. And rooms don't undecide easily. The bodybuilder's experience was different. He went back to his group, tried to act normal. His friends included him, talked to him, but the energy was off. Slightly more formal, slightly less relaxed. The easy camaraderie from before had a new tension underneath it. Not hostility, just awareness. They'd seen something, and you can't unsee things. He made a joke. They laughed, but the laugh was polite, not genuine. He suggested they leave. They agreed immediately. Too immediately. Before, it might have debated. Stayed longer. Made him convince them. Now, they were ready to go, because being around him had become slightly uncomfortable. Not because of who he was, because of who he'd revealed himself to be. Days later, the ripples continued. Stephen ran into someone who'd been in that room. The person greeted him warmly, more warmly than their previous interactions warranted. Asked how he was doing. Seemed genuinely interested. Stephen responded politely. Moved on with his day. He didn't connect it to the incident. Why would he? But the other person did. They'd filed Stephen under a different category now. Someone who handles himself well. And that category comes with different treatment. The bodybuilder experienced his own ripples. He went to the same gym, saw some of the same people. Everything seemed normal on the surface. But invitations slowed down. Group activities happened without him more often. Not because anyone decided to exclude him, just because people's natural inclination shifted slightly. They felt marginally less drawn to include him. And marginal shifts, over time, become significant distances. He probably felt it, that vague sense that something had changed. But he couldn't point to anything concrete. No one treated him badly. No one said anything. They just adjusted. And adjustments are harder to fight than confrontations. You can't argue against something no one will admit is happening. This is the aftermath nobody sees. No resolution seen. No apology. No reconciliation. Just the slow, silent redistribution of social currency. Stephen's account went up. The bodybuilders went down. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just enough. Enough that both men's experiences in that community changed. One became slightly more included, more respected, more noticed. The other became slightly more peripheral, more questioned, more dismissed. And neither of them probably understood exactly why. Because the aftermath isn't about events. It's about perception. And once perception shifts, everything built on it shifts too. Relationships, opportunities, interactions, status. All of it adjusts to the new reality. The reality that Stephen established in 5 seconds of controlled presence. The reality that the bodybuilder destroyed with one failed dominance play. Years could pass. Both men might forget the specific incident. But the aftermath? That persists. Because people remember how they felt around someone, even when they forget why they felt it. They remember that Stephen made them feel safe, grounded, impressed. They remember that the bodybuilder made them feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, wary. And those feelings guide behavior long after the moment passes. That's the part nobody sees. The long tail of a short interaction. The permanent shift from a temporary encounter. The way 5 seconds can reshape months or years of social dynamics. No drama required. Just consequence. Quiet, inevitable consequence. Stephen didn't win by overpowering someone twice his size. He won by refusing to play the game at all. That's what changed everything. Not strength, not speed, not ego, but restraint. Most people think power is about what you can do, how hard you can hit, how loud you can get, how much you can intimidate. But real power is about what you don't need to do. Stephen didn't need to prove himself, didn't need to defend his dignity, didn't need to win an argument or dominate a situation. He just needed to exist in his own certainty. And that was enough. More than enough. The bodybuilder played a game Stephen refused to enter. And a game with only one player isn't a game. It's just performance. And performance without an audience is meaningless. This is the lesson most people miss their entire lives. They think they have to respond to every challenge, answer every insult, prove every doubt wrong. They exhaust themselves fighting battles that don't need to be fought. Because here's the truth. Not every challenge deserves your energy. Not every insult deserves your response. Not every test deserves your participation. Some things you win by walking away from. Some things you win by staying still. Stephen understood this. He didn't avoid conflict out of fear. He avoided unnecessary conflict out of wisdom. There's a massive difference. Fear says, I can't handle this. Wisdom says, this isn't worth handling. Stephen's stillness wasn't submission. It was selection. He chose which battles mattered. This one didn't. He chose which voices deserved response. This one didn't. He chose where to invest his power. Not here. And that choice made him untouchable. Because you can't defeat someone who won't fight on your terms. You can't embarrass someone who won't be embarrassed. You can't dominate someone who won't submit to your frame. The bodybuilder learned this. He brought force to someone who brought presence. And presence always outlasts force. Always. Because force exhausts itself. It requires constant maintenance, constant proof, constant display. Presence just is. It doesn't diminish, doesn't waver, doesn't need validation. It exists independent of circumstance. And independence is the ultimate power. So here's what Stephen's story teaches us. You don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the most aggressive or the most dominant. You just have to be certain. Certain of who you are. Certain of your boundaries. Certain of what deserves your energy and what doesn't. And when you have that certainty, the world adjusts to you. Not because you force it to, because it has no other choice. Certainty creates gravity, and everything else orbits around it. Stephen created that gravity in 5 seconds. With silence, with stillness, with restraint. And it changed everything. Not just for him, for everyone in that room. They all learned something that day. Some learned it consciously. Most learned it instinctively. But they all learned. When was the last time your silence said more than your words? Think about it. Because silence, used correctly, is the most powerful communication tool you have. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It doesn't defend. It just reflects back the truth of a situation. And truth doesn't need words. It needs presence. Stephen had that presence. And because he didn't need anything else. That's the real lesson. Not how to fight better. How to not need to fight at all. Not how to dominate others. How to be so grounded in yourself that domination becomes irrelevant. Not how to win games. How to stop playing them entirely. That's true power. And it's available to anyone willing to cultivate it. Not through aggression. Through restraint.